Welcome and thank you all for standing by. At this time, all participants are on a listen-only mode. During the question and answer session, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone to ask a question. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. And now I'd like to turn the call over to Mr. Jared Liu. Sir, you may begin.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This is the third Thursday webcast series. It's a monthly webcast held at the lunch hour. The trainings leverage local successes by amplifying to a larger audience, two model organizations, methods, materials, and approaches. Sessions are planned to last no more than 1 hour, with two presenters speaking on the same topic from slightly different perspectives, each for 10 to 15 minutes, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of questions and answers. This session is approved by the ISA for 1 CEU hour and by SAF for 1 CFE. If you have not already given me your certification number, please email me after this session. Also, most state landscape architecture boards require only a certificate of completion, which ACT is happy to provide to members who request as well. This is a program of the Alliance for Community Trees, and we encourage you to consider joining if you're not a member. We also want to thank our sponsors of today's call, the Home Depot Foundation and the USDA Forest Service. Today's session is Putting the Green Back into Green Jobs, Part 2, Seeding Career Opportunities. The green industry is a $40 billion market and increasing quickly. In many sectors of the green industry, including tree care, there's a job for every trained worker available. Some communities have caught on and are offering workforce training to expose adults and high school graduates to these career opportunities. Particularly, the partnership between urban youth and trees diversifies the green industry's workforce and makes green areas more accessible to urban communities. Our first speaker today is Nancy Wolf. Nancy is an independent consultant now facilitating a number of urban forestry-related projects in New York City. She is the facilitator and organizer of the New York City Arbor Day John Bound High School Nursery Project and is the co-facilitator of Green Horizons and Green Futures, both environmental career days held in October of each year. Nancy recently wrote and co-edited Make Every Day an Arbor Day, Be One in a Million, which is the official curriculum guide for students and others involved in the New York City Million Trees Initiative. Nancy has been active in the environmental education field for over 30 years and was previously the executive director of the Environmental Action Coalition, an ACT founding member, and executive director of the New York State Urban and Community Forestry Council. She is on the board of the Magnolia Tree Earth Center, which is a present ACT member organization. She is a graduate of Hollins College in Roanoke and Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. She received her professional teacher training at the College of William and Mary, and we're happy to have Nancy back on our webcast series.
Thank you, Jared, and hello, everybody, and I hope everybody's got better weather than we do. I'm looking out the window, and it's a gray, kind of rainy-ish day in New York City, but we soldier on. So, hello, and I'm very, very happy to be talking to you about Green Horizons, which is the most amazing collaborative project I think I've ever been involved in, and I have almost always done work in collaboration with others. Green Horizons is going to be celebrating its 15th anniversary next year, 2010, at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where it all started. And this grew out of an initiative by the U.S. Forest Service to try to bring the idea of green careers to students. And we heard about the Oakland Project, which may or may not still be in existence, but after a visit from the person who had done that, a bunch of us, the usual gang that collaborated environmentally, we got together and said, we ought to do something. We could probably do that. We could probably present to students the idea of careers and steer them along the path toward what we knew was an increasing environmental and green career field. We decided to see if we could find financial sponsors and went to Con Ed first, which Con Ed has, this is our local utility. They have funded many, many urban forestry projects, and they basically consider themselves to be a partner in the urban forestry and green movement. And when we spoke to them, they said, what age group would you like to reach? And we said, we've been told by professionals in the field that we ought to be reaching out to middle school students because often people get to be juniors or seniors in high school and discover they want to be a green worker, and they have not taken the right courses in high school. And they urged us to get to kids earlier in the field, earlier in the school curriculum. And we said we'd like to reach out to middle school kids, and they said, oh, one of our projects, one of our main goals is to reach out with science and math to middle school kids. So why don't we do it? And that was the beginning of it almost 15 years ago. Con Ed has stayed with this as a real partner, and the other partner has been the Bartlett Tree Expert Company. And I think that's one of the lessons that we'd like to convey to people. Having financial partners that stay with you, and most often we've found that's the private sector companies that understand the importance of this. That makes for a really stable program, and we are really very fortunate that Bartlett and Con Ed have seen themselves as partners, not just every now and then giving us money, but real partners in developing the program. When I say collaboration, I really am talking about the fact that just about everybody, that's anybody in the environmental world, has been involved in Green Horizons, and this includes government agencies, local and state and federal, and also the environmental groups that we are all familiar with here, and we're blessed with a lot. And so it has been a collaborative project from the beginning. The budget is $18,000 only, but that's been enough because almost everything has been given to this project. We don't pay anyone to come and share their experience with these young people. We don't pay for the site, which is moved around to all the 5 boroughs. We don't pay for anything except things that we absolutely have to buy, and that has been another way that we have kept this project very, very affordable. So that's where that underpinning has been. And if you are looking at the stations, you see that I'm talking now about the Staten Island event that just happened about 1 month ago at Snug Harbor and Staten Island Botanical Garden. Number one, they gave us the site for free all day. Kids came to that site. What they found there was 19 stations that they previously had been able to choose from, and we gave them badges, and each student had an opportunity to be involved in 2 stations of their choice. So we divvied all the kids up, and there were about 130 middle schoolers in the rain. By the way, they came in the rain. I couldn't quite believe it, but it did happen. And they fanned out all over the garden, being part of the real thing. What our big notion here with Green Horizons is that no one has to sit and listen to somebody talk. You don't have go into the gym and kind of make your way around tables. You choose activities that you are doing that are just what the grown-ups are doing. So if you're studying climbing and pruning, you are actually even in a bucket, going up a little bit. If you are learning to plant trees and create a new forest, then you are actually doing that right there. You are measuring air quality. You are measuring water quality. This is the real thing, and that I think is why it's been so well accepted by kids and by the teachers and the guidance counselors. And I was saying earlier before we started this call that perhaps the most important thing that Green Horizons has done is to introduce to New York City teachers and guidance counselors that there are lots and lots of jobs out there in many, many fields that most of them know very little, if anything, about. And that has really been exciting because they didn't even know how to recommend to the kids how to find their way toward a green career because they didn't really know anything about them. So there's been lots of information produced and given out to the adults as well as the children on how if you really love this, then here's how to go. If you really love this and you want to go to a New York City high school that specializes in environmental matters, then here is the list of high schools, and it's open to anyone from any area. So that was the main thrust, has been the main thrust of it, and the feedback from both students and teachers and guidance counselors is that this is the way to go. To give them a taste of the real thing. This rain thing drove us crazy because this was the first time in 14 years that we had had rain, but they came anyway. Every school that registered came, and all the kids got out there and just did their thing. One science teacher called me the next day to say that actually the rain reinforced what they are teaching. If you want to get into these fields, you'll be outdoors a lot probably, and if it's raining, you'll probably go out anyway. So that was the amazing thing about the kids this year. They just they loved it, and they succeeded even though the weather wasn't the best that we'd ever had. And I can't stress enough how wonderful it is that the professionals that do all this, they do it out of love, really. You don't have to persuade people to be part of this because they feel this is one day in the year that they can give back to young children the thing that they love, and they're enthusiastic, and their enthusiasm about their careers, of course, is evident, and the kids feel it. So that is the way it has worked, and hopefully it will continue to work. Con Ed announced at the lunchtime this year that as long as this program was there, they would sponsor it. Well, maybe, it'll be a forever offering. Most of the projects I've been involved in have had a certain life, and then they kind of begin to kind of peter out, and the funding kind of goes away, and you say, well, that was terrific, and hopefully we did something permanent. But, now we'll go do something else. I think Green Horizons, the people that have been involved feel that this ought to be a permanent part of what New York City offers its young people. So next year we're going to be at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, which hosted the very first one. And we're trying to have more of a PR thing next year than we usually do, because it's the 15th celebration year. So that's what we're calling it. And of course, you've seen, if you've looked at some of the stations, you realize that we try to really be very, very broadly focused. In the beginning, it was very much urban forestry and arboriculture and those kinds of careers. We've broadened that. We've done landscape architecture. We've done air quality, water quality, beekeeping, a lot of different things. So the kids have a tremendous array to choose from, and it's their choice what they do, and that has been it's terrific. For the most part, they get what they want, and they're happy to go to the stations. So that is kind of just one other thing, and I know I'm coming to the end, I think, of my 15 minutes, but the one other thing is how do you get the word out, which was a big hassle in the beginning, and in a smaller city, it would probably be very much easier. But here in New York, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of schools. Electronic, electronic sending is really, really helped tremendously. We put the brochure online, and so many people find out about it through a networking that just doesn't stop. And the Department of Education has been very helpful to us. They send out a very special principals newsletter, and they have put it in the principals newsletter. They have sent special electronic messages to the science teachers, and then the parochial schools now also communicate with their schools online. So that has made everything infinitely easier. We still do printed brochures, and we send those out and use them all over the place, but for the most part, we reach out to all the schools, independent, parochial, and public, via electronic transfer of the brochure. So I think I'm almost out of time, Jared. Am I not?
Yeah, you can, if there's anything else you wanted to say. Otherwise, I'll pepper you with some questions.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Jane, can you open the lines for questions, please?
Yes, thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star and then 1 on your touch-tone phone. Please unmute your phone and record your name clearly when prompted so I may introduce you for your question. Again, as a reminder, press star 1 on your touchtone.
Great. And anyone who's shy or just is more inclined to type your question in, you can do that at the Q&A section at the top of your screen, and I can come on the line and read the question for you. So I think it's a tremendous success that you all had, particularly with the funders, and I know that's one of the first places that we in the nonprofit community are eager to figure out the details behind. Can you talk more about why you feel that this was a good fit for Bartlett and Con Ed and the other partners who came to the table, or what that looked like when you first sat down to the table to really get them engaged on this at the first time?
Well, fortunately, we hit a jackpot with Con Ed because we said we want to do science and math. We want to do environmental careers, and there'll be a lot of science and math in middle schools, and that's exactly what they wanted to do. So that was a fit from the beginning. The Bartlett Tree Expert Company, of course, is a very well-known arboriculture company, and this fit into their bottom line. And one of the things that they're trying to do, they work a lot in the cities, and they don't have people from the cities applying to them. They don't have a diverse workforce. So one of the things that they are trying to do is reach out to young people in cities, and of course, we have a wide variety, wide diversity of kids that come to Green Horizons, and many of them are from backgrounds where, it has not been typical for people to go into the green professions or to know anything about forestry or arboriculture. So that is why they have been happy to do it and happy to stay. And we would like to find one more private sector partner who would kind of buy in the same way that Bartlett and Con Ed have done. We could use a little bit more money. We would like to do a newsletter for the kids, and we've only been able to do that sporadically. I think the proof of the pudding on the funding is that the one other place where Green Horizons has been done in a very big way is Philadelphia. The Pennsylvania Hort Society, Philadelphia Green people came up to observe one of ours and got all excited and wanted to do something similar, and they did. But their funding was, they got a lot of funding to begin with, but a lot of it was some special grants. A lot of it was, I think, some governmental buy-in. It didn't last, and that was the thing that was the saddest. I'm sure it was very successful the 2 or 3 times that it was done, but it didn't have lasting stability, and that's one of the things that Green Horizons has been enjoying. I mean, it's like a pearl of great price. If we had to run around every year and try to find $18,000 from new donors, it would have been very, very difficult.
Right, and I do know that some groups are fortunate enough to be getting some stimulus dollars since there was so much focus on job creation, but I'm sure that's what they're going to be looking at a year from now is, what happens next. I mean, and I've done many projects where we've had to confront that. I just wanted to mention very quickly that, by the way, that there are a number of other programs for young adults that are putting them directly into green jobs. And the Parks Department and the New York Restoration Project, they're doing one. The Trees New York doing one, and both of these are ACT member groups. But stimulus funds and other special funds are coming in for those. But the question really would be, what do you do, when that is no longer there? Can you talk more, too, about how you're getting the space donated and negotiating leases for free and getting speakers to donate their time?
Well, first of all, we don't have any leases. We have partnered with the right people in each borough, I guess, and they know when it's their turn. This has been going on now for such a long time. When I call one of the the executive in charge of each of the places, they just laugh and say, "Oh, yes, we know it's our turn." We're at Staten Island, as I explained this year. Next year at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. The year after that, we will be in the Bronx at Van Cortlandt Park, and so that's the Parks Department as the partner. The year after that in Central Park, and the year after that in Queens Botanical Garden, and then we'll be back in Staten Island. So they already know that in another 5 years, we'll probably be there. they also consider that this is part of their commitment to the young people of New York, and they are happy to have us there, possibly from their point of view, having people come into the garden, having children learn about the space. I'm thinking now particularly of the botanical gardens, having children know about them, having adults know about their programs. That's where it's bottom line for them. And I know that most of the children who came to Central Park 2 years ago, they knew Central Park existed, but they had never been to Central Park. And the fact that kids from other boroughs went to Staten Island was nothing short of amazing, because to most New York City kids, Staten Island is like, God only knows where it is. And lots of them rode the ferry over, which was really a wonderful experience going across New York Harbor on the ferry. So it's an opening of eyes. It's the widening of the future possibilities. I think that is one of the things that people love most about it.
And did you all start the John Bound program before or after this one?
John Bound program came a little later.
Okay.
But that's the nursery, of course, where the trees are for Arbor Day, and the John Bound program does parallel this. And John Bound students and teachers teach floriculture. We didn't have it this year because they couldn't come to Staten Island, but almost every year they teach floriculture as a career, and that's a very popular station, as you can imagine, because they're all getting to arrange beautiful flower arrangements.
And is there any advice you can offer people who maybe already do work in high school, similar to how you are with John Bound, but also want to get into middle school, working with middle school students, or is there anything that is different from your perspective with working with the age groups?
I think middle school students are perfect for a kind of an opening up of the idea. In other words, they're barely just thinking, what will I do with my life? And they probably hear a lot of adults who are talking about the fact that jobs are scarce and they're worried about it and so on. And David McMaster of Bartlett keeps saying, these green jobs can't be outsourced. You have to take care of the trees that are here, It's a good message. And we just emphasize that this is a growing field, that there are lots of jobs being developed, and that you don't have to fear if you want to go into these fields. You don't have to fear that there are no jobs there, because there's increasing numbers of jobs in the environmental field.
I'm glad you said that, because it's a question that I get on the Hill all the time, and I reinforce, this is what I hear from our members, whether it's the groups that you're working with, whether it's Eagle Eye up in Boston. I know does a great job training kids, but there are a lot of groups out there. You mentioned Penhort and some other groups in New York. But, they all say that, for every trained worker, there's a job available.
Right.
So I think that's a great point to emphasize. Right. Are there any questions in queue?
I'm showing nothing from the phone lines at this time. Again, as a reminder, press *1 and record your name to ask a question.
Great. And we will have a question and answer period at the end for either presenter, so you can hold your questions for Nancy if there are additional ones. So we will turn to our second speaker now, who is Dr. Mary Washington. She's with Parks and People Foundation's, or she is Parks and People Foundation's Associate Director of Great Parks, Clean Streams, and Green Communities.
That is a mouthful.
And is a co-principal investigator of the Baltimore Ecosystem Study. In this role, she manages community greening and environmental education programs, is the lead developer of the Green Career Ladder and Workforce Development programs, and facilitates relationships between the Baltimore Ecosystem Study, community groups, and governmental organizations. In her capacity serving on the Baltimore Sustainability Commission and chairing the Water Working Group, she contributed to the community process that led to the drafting and passage of the Baltimore City Sustainability Plan. Her training in sociology and population statistics have stimulated her work in community organizing and neighborhood greening efforts. Mary has a PhD degree from Johns Hopkins, and we're happy to have Mary join us.
Hello, everyone. This is my first webinar, so bear with me. But we're really excited about the opportunity to share, and I think it's great to follow behind you, Nancy, and try to share with people both what we've tried to do in the area of social enterprise and also what we're doing with green jobs. But I just wanted to share with everyone that, first of all, we have this general goal at Parks and People Foundation to really grow really healthy and sustainable and economically vibrant communities. There are many of us that are aware and interested in restoring the natural environment and doing what we can to mitigate the consequences of climate change. And we've tried over the decades, certainly, to communicate these to low-income and minority communities. And with our work, because we do both the organizing work as well as support research, we find on the ground that people, there are certain types of concerns that people have on the ground, and they're almost always having to do with youth, certainly having to do with employment opportunities, and always certainly very much what can you do in my neighborhood today. So, over the last 25 years, through all of our partnerships, we've developed two sort of main areas where we focus our endeavors to create, healthy, sustainable communities, and that's our Great Parks division. And here we have community grant programs. We work with people to restore vacant lots. We've actually gotten very involved with helping to support the creation of a community greening network called Sea Green, where neighborhood gardens, community gardens, school-based gardens have a very small membership fee, and they work together to maybe get discounts on well, I'll mention that later. And then our other area of concentration is motivating youth. And we are actually finding that in our social enterprise area, we've had some success on that. But then we also found very much that we needed to look at green careers and how we could see what we're doing in environmental education and green careers come together. So on the social enterprise side, we have a business that's called Chesapeake Trees, and we focus on native tree sales, native nurseries. We're trying to grow a native nursery, and the proceeds will support our work in community organizing, in neighborhood forestry and greening, in environmental education, and very importantly, our work in linking research to ecosystem management and stewardship. So one of the things I think that I'm trying to figure out, well, what could we share with the people on the call from our experiences around creating social enterprises and particularly sort of the notion of community wealth. And Nancy, you mentioned about the traditional fundraising. I'm so glad that you have been liberated from that.
Well, don't believe. I mean, it's not necessarily going to happen all the time.
that labor of love. So certainly, it's not. We're looking at it's not traditional fundraising. It's not getting grant money, doing this social enterprising. It's not sort of our traditional gift and donations. And very importantly, I think people on the call who are considering either social enterprises or creating opportunities for green jobs, that it's not a quick fix out of a problem. You might want to say, well, we're not getting grants to fund our youth to do restoration work. Maybe we'll start a contracting business and use some of the proceeds from that to support the environmental education work. You have to think that sort of thing out very, very clearly. And again, it's not for everyone. But what it is an opportunity to support your mission from unrestricted funds. One of the challenges certainly is when you get a grant, very often they don't want to pay for all the stuff that makes the work possible. So, they want you to have 200 youth plant 1,000 trees over the course of a year, but they don't want to pay for any staff to organize that or to pay for the gas for the vans to get the youth there. And again, with our young people, they very much need funding to engage in some of this activity. But it is an exciting new way that you can generate funds to support your mission. It's a way to engage the good parts about the market economy into supporting nonprofit sector activity. And also it's a way to leverage existing assets. So if you have grant money, if you have already some unrestricted gifts and donations, from people that just write a check and tell you to do whatever you want with that. And I know that that's rare, but occasionally it happens. Having a social enterprise to sort of supplement that could be a really good thing. And also, I think in general, our goal is, as you say, Nancy, that we do really, in terms of looking to the future, need to really understand that we have to reduce our dependency on, foreign oil, but also reduce our dependency, on our the traditional granting cycles. If you do it right, you need to. I'm not an attorney, so when thinking about a social enterprise, you certainly need to speak with an attorney. There isn't. From what we understand, there really isn't a standard legal structure, and sometimes that structure does depend on the size of the organization, where you're operating, what type of activity it is, or what types of insurance are you going to need. Insurance is very important. We are a 501c3, and our attorneys will tell us that it's okay for us to, engage in developing a social enterprise. Something you also want to do when you're thinking about a social enterprise would be sort of what's the lay of the land? What is your current funding environment? The good thing about the current environment is there are a lot of ambitious goals around restoration. There's a lot of investment. You noted the stimulus funds. They're certainly, at least for the next 18 months, we can really look forward to opportunities, I think, for perhaps some nonprofits to see where can you become sub-awardees. Maybe you weren't the ones to get the $1 million or the $3 million stimulus fund, but it might be that, someone got that money and are kind of thinking, oh, my goodness, how are we going to manage, how are we going to do all this work? You might be able to support someone in doing that. Again, looking at some of the restoration work, bioremediation, there's a lot of work in that area. And some people are actually looking at making products. But again, it's something that can really begin to sustain your organization if you do it right. But the thing is, you have to make sure you have board support, making sure that their staff or employee buy-in, and you actually need to have a dedicated staff with a business background. When we were developing our concept and moving forward on our Chesapeake Trees business, we actually hired a Wharton PhD who didn't mind making a nonprofit income. Not PhD, MBA, who was very, very committed to social enterprise. And so we were very fortunate there. And she created an advisory committee of people who were in the private sector as well as the public sector to kind of offer us guidance and legal advice when we're moving along in that direction. So the two businesses that we're developing plans for is our Chesapeake Trees, as I've mentioned, and maybe some of you have gone to meetings and seen presentations on that. But we're also interested, and this actually didn't take off, and I wanted to share it because sometimes you have great ideas and they can make a lot of sense, but when you actually try to do it, it's you put it on the ground and it doesn't work as well. But is City Woodworks. We have this idea, of course, that the cities and others are felling a lot of trees, and what could we do to help people recycle and repurpose some of that? And that business hasn't actually worked out. But Chesapeake Trees is running along. We also are doing a rainwater collection system, so we wanted to make some rain barrels. We developed the design for composters. We're also, interestingly, offering, I think, what we're tentatively calling right now urban ecosystem restoration experiences. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these Party for a Cause, or maybe for someone's bat mitzvah or for their 13th birthday, they want to do something socially relevant or want to do something. And so we are marketing, for lack of a better word, to some of our donors and our participants. It's like, hey, why don't you, have a party, but have a party where you do some restoration work, and then maybe we take you out for kayaking, but we give a lesson wrapped around it. So we've just started that, and we really are excited about the possibilities there. But where we are with Chesapeake Trees is that I wanted to do a disclaimer from the announcement, the description, we're not actually a wholesale nursery at the moment. We're a brokerage, and we specialize in native tree species that thrive in urban environments. So we're right now the sole Maryland, Virginia distributor for RPM. And we have a biennial sale in the fall and the spring of 2.5 caliper trees. They are containerized. We do offer opportunities to have discounts that we can provide to community groups that are doing greening projects, and as I mentioned, our Sea Green. Still, our goal is actually to have a nursery site where we can grow up to 6,000 trees. Jared, you mentioned a little earlier in addressing the question around leases. We've been talking to parks. We said, maybe there's a section of the park. So we've spoken with the Department of Recreation of Parks, trying to figure out a way to, have a site where we can grow trees there. We're in very good negotiations, and we're very hopeful with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. And for those of you that are living in cities that have large housing authorities that are downsizing, very often there isn't another use for the site. It lays fallow, and we're talking with them and saying, we just really need them for the site for about 3 to 5 years, and then we can kind of be like these itinerant nursery farmers. We'll see how this works, but so they're intrigued by the idea of having a positive use for demolition sites where the large public housing buildings are being taken down, acres and acres and acres, and letting us set up doing trees there. And then again, we think that in doing these businesses that we can generate social and economic benefits. But to the issue of green career ladder, so because the tree nursery has not just because of that, because of the points that I mentioned earlier about constantly the work that we do with communities, they ask us and want support in their efforts to provide opportunities for their youth. And, we're in a city where it was very working class, blue collar. We do have academic institutions. We do have medical institutions. But the majority of the population historically, certainly in the last half of the last century and this one, beginning of this one, were associated with the jobs with Bethlehem Steel, associated with work along the harbor, and those careers simply aren't there anymore. And so their children, there's not a culture of thinking of the environment or green careers. So just as Nancy said, that there's a way we have to even introduce people to the very notion that there are employment opportunities other than, sort of what their parents did, or what they're actually more correctly what their grandparents did. So one of our goals we see this as our concept is the green career ladder. And, we're specifically are interested in increasing, actually bringing our resources and leveraging the resources of other groups to low-income and minority groups that are currently underrepresented in the emerging green economy. And by doing this, we focus on environmental education, outreach opportunities, stewardship opportunities, and job training and creation. Our key features of any of our programs, and I have 3 that I'm going to overview real quickly. I'm looking at the clock. We very much want to encourage urban ecosystem and nature exploration. We think that in order for people to think of these opportunities that are going to be coming up as not just simply jobs, but as careers, and also that they connect in a very deep way to restoring the natural environment as a career, but also as an obligation. We think we need to give them opportunities to learn about the urban areas of ecosystems and also to explore nature. We think it's also very important to have ongoing participant and program assessment. We really have to constantly, we do, beginning and ending assessments. We do it currently, during the programs, asking people how are they feeling, what's going on. We also think that every high school student that, or even middle school student that is working with us should have a resume and should be counseled in some ways. And so this is where our partnerships are very important. And to the first point, environmental education and literacy, that's very key, and that we develop a sense of community service learning. We think it's important to have a job and to do this work because you're being paid for it, but also we want to provide opportunities for them to fulfill their community service learning hours. And again, is to increase the likelihood that they'll be stewards. For older youth, we do internships and other types of apprenticeships and on-the-job training. And the 4 programs that we have operating, one is called Kids Grow. It's a kindergarten through 5th grade. They're not paid, but this is kind of like our farm team. We see ourselves creating over the course of a child's life opportunities to deepen their connection to the natural environment, increase their interest in becoming scientists. So we think, too, we'd like to create the scientists, the architects, the landscapers, in addition to the tree trimmers and all those, we want a full range of, green, dark green, and light green collar jobs. So our middle school program is called Project Blue. So that's for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Branches is a summer and fall program that is 6 weeks in the summer. They actually get paid to work in branches. We work in the city parks. And then the Maryland Civic Justice Corps is a project that we do in collaboration with the Maryland Park Service, and youth are paid 6 weeks during the summer to engage environmental restoration work. And I'm happy to answer questions about the details. But again, overall, the conceptual model is to create these opportunities to advance up a programmatic ladder where youth begin to gain both experiences, they become ecological stewards, they can think of themselves as natural resource manager professionals, advocates, because we certainly need environmental advocates, and educators. And so in pursuit of these goals, we rely very heavily on a number of partnerships, from our Mayor's Office of Economic Development to foundations to critical area commissions. The U.S. Forest Service has been a long and true partner throughout our development of each one of these programs, and the Baltimore Ecosystem Study. I'll probably just share, the Kids Grow is K through 5. We're operating in Baltimore City schools. We have a curriculum that's been developed by the Baltimore Ecosystem Study, and we focus on ecological concepts, developing leadership, and just kind of introducing them. The middle school program is pre-career awareness, and we focus on math and science literacy, and this is where we begin to introduce field trips and doing presentations and working with professionals, hydrologists, soil scientists, foresters. And then our 2 programs, Branches. And Branches actually started in 2004, and we've provided about 82 youth with on-the-job training and environmental educational experiences. And through the Maryland Justice Corps, we've provided 400 youth. It piloted in 2008, and we did it again in 2009. And again, we just see ourselves continuing to grow. This year in January, we'll actually start a workforce development program for adults or for disconnected youth. So if youth aren't in school at the time, we look to reconnect them to school through working with us. And this will actually be full-time, thanks to stimulus money. It will be full-time employment for about 20 people. So we're really very committed to not just simply recruiting people for these jobs, but actually growing them. So I look forward to any questions that people have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mary. Jean, can you open the lines, please?
Again, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone and record your name.
And again, you're welcome to type your questions in, and I can come on the line and read them for you. There's a lot here, and I wanted to. I forgot to mention when Nancy was speaking that she has a program booklet that will be available. It'll be linked to our website and available to anyone to download. Mary, do you have any kind of program models or booklets that people can use for replicating if they want?
Yeah, we'll have to talk. We're working on that. We're pretty entrepreneurial, and we're busy building these things, and that's a very lame excuse, but we're doing our best. I'm happy to share some of our, like a PowerPoint, and we do have an end-of-year brochure. But I'm very happy to share with anyone. If you would like to facilitate that, we could post something. But we don't have a booklet yet. We are developing the curriculum. We have a curriculum for our middle school program.
Great. Yeah, I know. But in some of the surveys that we ask members, I've frequently heard that people are wanting to get more into education or looking for ideas that others are doing, and I think this is a level of depth too that would really excite people. So whatever you have, I think they'd be happy to share. Where did you start? I guess I was thinking on that one slide where you were showing that organizational capacity and marketable assets and market opportunity all had to align. Did you just start with the community need and then you just kept building off of that, or was it really like you sort of sat down and said, these three things have to be there before we even? No,
and again, I want to say that this is the way you should do things, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. It actually, it just kept saying, this makes sense. We've been providing environmental education for elementary school. We started this, it was sort of disconnected, and we started a high school program. When I got here, the fifth graders were saying, well, what are we going to do next year? And I said, well, I guess we better put together a middle school program. And so it kind of came organically in that way. So I guess the logic of it is kind of post hoc, but we began to look internally at what we were already doing, and I think maybe that's something I could offer is like look at what you're already doing and see how you can enhance or make connections either with other people or if you could beef up what you're doing or deepen what you're doing in a particular area. So that's kind of how we started. It was that we have this need and that people aren't going to hear our mission around environmental restoration and increasing tree canopy, if we can't connect them to jobs. So it's simple as that, or at the very least, giving them something productive and useful to do during after-school hours, and that is really key here. That that time between 3 and 6 in the evening is when a lot of youth get into trouble, and so we think these are good projects.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned the partnerships because that's another thing that we frequently hear is almost all of the work that we do wouldn't be possible without so many different levels of partnerships, and frequently it's, the community volunteers, it's the local government. But can you touch on that a little bit more? Who are some of the cross-sector partnerships that help to really forge this along?
I would say Goodwill Industry really helped us experiment with could we do workforce development? Could we, really get into this doing green careers versus simply green jobs? We think it's great for people to learn how to put a tree into the ground, but we actually think in terms of longevity and sustainability for that person economically, they should know why they're doing it and be able to manage others in doing it. And so we had a good partner with Goodwill where they were working with court-involved adults, and we got to experiment with having a couple of people join our teams and join our volunteer groups and see what we could do and what we couldn't do. So we realized early on that our ability to sort of manage people with very, very high needs wasn't something we could do unless we were in partnership. So they handled all the case management part of it, and we handled just here, this is the job, working with us, working, supervised, and creating the work. So doing that for a couple of years and then thinking, okay, well, we have a commitment to helping people return to the workforce or re-enter, or if they're court-involved youth. But we find for us it's best to have integrated crews where, it's a mixture of people from different backgrounds.
Okay. Do you do any work with people with incarceration records?
Well, that's kind of what I was speaking to, that we have, and the retention rates are really low.
Okay.
So while we don't exclude that, we're trying to look for areas where, with limited resources, we can make the best impact. And, we kind of joke around and say, they're just kind of knucklehead kids that need need help, and so if we can keep them out of the system, that's kind of more productive. But we don't exclude. I guess that's not something that's checked on the box. We don't exclude anyone. But because we work with youth and young people, there's certain offenses that we can't hire someone.
Sure.
We wouldn't.
And I know Sustainable South Bronx up in New York does a really good job with that too, and focusing their mission on trying to reintegrate those people with incarceration records. So I wasn't aware of that part of your program, so I was just curious.
It's not a target. It might be something that we do in the future in collaboration with DJS. But again, I think people should be very mindful that it requires a level of engagement and attention, and you just have to have a specific commitment to that mission, I think.
I just would like to say also that I agree, Mary, with that. Magnolia Tree Earth Center has had some work done by kids, in lieu of incarceration. One of the larger not-for-profits in Bedford-Stuyvesant has a training program, and it was a mixed experience. And the key thing was supervision. That the kids that came over, the young people that came over to do work, they probably were not as carefully supervised as they should be by the sponsoring organization. So our message to them was had to be done really, really, really well.
Yeah. And it's interesting for our branches program this past summer, we found sort of after the fact that there were 4 youth that were gang members, and so we had to actually have a conversation about no colors and no gang signs, and it's interesting. Some kids were afraid to go into certain neighborhoods because they were from a different side of town. So it's been a very interesting. Like I said, we can't exclude because the need is so great, and so many of the youth have had some type of interaction. But there's also so many more that need that support, and traditional funding, there seems to be a lot of support for court-involved youth, and yet very little to keep them out of it. So we really want to be a part of, again, supporting efforts for reentry, but also doing what we can to keep people from, to slow down the tap for people getting into the system in the first place.
Okay. I think y'all have maybe one of the most successful projects that's has stimulus funds engaged in them.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips that you can offer people for how you went after the stimulus funds? And how
my goodness, I guess, again, just determination and just doing it. But that's why I wanted to mention that I'm aware, not here in Baltimore, but I have seen situations from other very large grants where the agency, the group, was not actually able to manage that. So I would encourage people to look and see in their state who actually, got the stimulus funds, and see are there ways in which you could connect with them. Because again, I think all of us didn't realize how much of the management side of just managing those funds that are going to be.
Did you go through the state forester? I mean, because there was an opportunity here to get stimulus funds for certain urban forestry projects, and it had to be chosen by the state forester, and then there was the northeast area that did a final cut.
Yeah.
So you went through that process.
So I think, we kind of did a shotgun. We basically sent it to everybody who would listen, and it's not a total. I'll just say it's slightly above my pay grade that I don't know exactly how I don't know today exactly which one of those work. My job is to get it going.
Right. I took down notes, Mary, from Magnolia Tree Earth Center on some of the enterprise ideas.
Yeah, great.
Because we're looking to expand the organization again after a contraction. And I'm thinking that some of those might work well.
Well, we're happy to come and be consultants for a fee.
Yeah.
Part of our
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any questions in queue?
We did have a question from the phone lines. Brian Rogers, your line is open.
Hi. I guess I'm kind of your brother or sister organization. I work with Washington Parks and people.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Fine. Everything you're doing is basically kind of what we're doing. We're kind of like shadowing each other. We're a little smaller, though, and I think I called you guys about we have a grant with Department of Environment to place 600 trees in the stream valley of Watts Branch. And I think I called you guys to see if your tree people could sell me some trees.
Oh, okay.
But you guys said that you only do Maryland and Virginia.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do D.C. There's somebody else that has that. But let's talk offline about what we can, perhaps what we can help with.
Yeah.
Yeah, just ask for Mary, and we'll
so one of the things you hit it exactly on the head when you were talking about. Number one, as far as green jobs are, everyone, when they talk about green jobs, they're usually more or less talking about buildings. And that can be certified. But when you talk about the things that we do as far as managing parks, restoring wetlands, stuff like that, there's no real certification for things like that.
Or
is there?
Yeah, there are. You can get certified forestry, and we're working with Baltimore City Community College to have them sort of beef up their environmental science associate degree to allow for that certification. Yeah, but they can be certified in pesticide, horticulture. There are a number of different things that they can. Nancy might know more.
Well, I think the professional organizations are the ones that usually provide certification, but that's an interesting idea to have some kind of other community-based certification.
Right.
New York State's had a terrible time with certification. There is no certification of someone who claims to be a forester. It's been the most amazing thing. You know, you certify hairdressers, but there's no certification for foresters, and that's because evidently there has been, every time there was an attempt, people who have a chainsaw who imagine themselves to be foresters or arborists, they hit the phone lines to legislators, and they won't do it. But some kind of certification of community forestry worker, or whatever the word would be, that would be very interesting. And a community college would probably be the best. You know, that's an idea that I hadn't heard before, but I think it's actually would be something that a lot of people might be interested in.
Well, Nancy, it definitely looks like you should have us come up and
that'd be great. We could have the one great big park for people power.
And I'll mention too, I mean, it's sort of tangential, but something we're hoping works in tandem is the Sustainable Sites Initiative has been moving ahead, and that's sort of the mirror to what LEED has as far as buildings. We're hoping that Sustainable Sites will be for the landscaping by this process as well. Right. It's not exactly professional job certification.
Yeah, that makes that great.
Are there any other questions in queue?
I'm showing nothing more further from the phone lines at this time.
Okay, perfect. We're at the top of the hour, and we will go ahead and wrap it up with that. I'm going to put up on the screen a survey. If everyone can take a couple minutes and fill that out, that really helps us to develop our programs. Today's presentation, the recorded session, and a resource list will be available in about a week to anyone who completes that survey. And the next webcast session is on December 17th. It's the third Thursday of the month. It's Canopy Campaigns and Public Tree Goals, Part 1, Goal Setting. Otherwise, I want to thank our presenters, Nancy and Mary. I want to thank all the participants and the sponsors of today's call, the Home Depot Foundation and the USDA Forest Service. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.